That moment is burned into my mind like a scar. I was barely awake, just adding milk to my coffee, when Ethan, our brand new CEO with a golden surname, marched into the break room. He didn't say hello, not even a nod. His eyes flicked over me like I was outdated furniture in his way. Elena, in my office, now. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an execution order. I'd given this company more than a decade of my life. I had laid the foundation for the client services team. I had overseen and secured countless contracts and trained most of the team that now sat just outside his office door. But to Ethan, none of it counted. Mr. Harrington built this company from scratch, brick by brick, with loyalty as its mortar. Ethan stepped into power like he was born to rule, indifferent and entitled. I walked behind him, each step heavier than the last. He didn't bother to sit. "You're fired," he said, like he was reading a weather report. "Deadweight like you is holding us back." I blinked, stunned. For a second, I thought it was a prank. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," he replied, flipping through his folder like I no longer existed. "Clear your desk. Now." I looked at him like I was waking from a nightmare. My pulse thundered, drowning out every thought. I wanted to argue, to ask why, to demand a reason. But I chose to smile, a measured, composed smile that said more than words ever could. "Got it," I replied. "Enjoy your kingdom, Ethan," I added. I left with my spine straight, dignity intact, though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My coworkers glanced up, confusion and concern etched across their faces. A few pushed back their chairs, eyes wide, about to speak. I gave a small, firm shake of my head. Let me go with dignity. I gathered my things without a word. The drive home blurred with memories, all pressing against my chest. 11 years of blood, sweat, and tears. I had sacrificed birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, working through grief, stress, and loneliness. I poured my life into this place, and they tossed me out like old paper. But the rage hadn't come, not yet. I was haunted by one word: why? That question kept me awake, circling like a vulture. I barely slept. The smug tone in Ethan's voice gnawed at me. The timing made even less sense. We were days from closing the biggest deal of the year, a deal I'd nurtured like a fragile plant. I knew the client better than their own rep. I'd scheduled the final review for Friday, and now I was erased. Had he even skimmed the documents? The next morning, just after 9, my phone lit up. The number was unfamiliar. I almost let it go, bracing for more bad news. But again, curiosity cracked through my fear. "Elena, it's Mr. Harrington." That voice sent a cold jolt straight through me. The real CEO, the man who mattered, the one who brought me on board 11 years ago after just one meeting. "I just got into the office," he said, voice strained. "What the hell happened, Elena? Why did you leave?" I hesitated, the weight of everything crashing down again. "Ethan fired me." Dead silence. Then with a sharp inhale, "He did what?" "He claimed I was unproductive and no longer necessary." He paused, too long, then spoke slowly, measuring every word. "Elena, did he even bother to go over your contract?" I frowned. "What are you getting at? Isn't he handling the Silvermere deal this morning?" "Yes. The meeting was set for 11. "Oh, for God's sake." I heard papers being shuffled, followed by a sharp bang. He must have hit the desk. "Elena, there's a clause in your agreement," he said. "It was added after the last takeover mess. You're not just managing the account. You're the only one authorized to close Silvermere." I stood still, stunned. Ethan couldn't finish the deal without me. Mr. Harrington added, "Not legally, Not professionally. Not realistically. Without you, that deal's doomed. A creeping clarity spread through me. He skipped over the contract. Ethan was completely clueless about his mistake, and that was the moment something clicked inside me. The sting of betrayal hadn't faded, but now it was replaced by something sharper: power. He had made his move too soon, and now it was backfiring. Mr. Harrington ended the call without saying goodbye. The silence that followed crackled with his fury. I sat still in my living room, untouched coffee cooling on the table, eyes unfocused. He had no clue. His son had let me go without bothering to read the fine print. I sank into the couch, letting out a soft, sarcastic chuckle. 11 years, and this was the send-off. Undone by a rash, entitled boy pretending to lead. Treating executive calls like game strategies. But in the real world, bad choices have weight, and this company was in for a harsh lesson. I had no idea what the fallout would be. A part of me wanted to walk in and witness the chaos firsthand, but the part of me that worked overtime in silence and sacrificed pride wanted to let them collapse. I didn't wait long. At 10:13 sharp, the phone rang again. It was Ethan's name on the screen. I ignored it and let it go to voicemail. A minute later, more calls. First from reception, then legal, then finance. My phone lit up endlessly, buzzing like it was possessed. I didn't pick up a single call. The voicemail icon blinked stubbornly. I finally tapped to listen. "Hey, Elena, it's Ethan." His voice was tight with panic. "Elena, look, yesterday was a misstep. I jumped the gun. We really need you back immediately. It's critical. Call me when you get this." Critical. That word echoed in my skull like a loose screw in a machine. No apology. Not once. Not even in a fake corporate way. All I heard was panic, wrapped in a flimsy veil of courtesy. I sipped the bitter, cold coffee, unmoved from my spot. At exactly 10:30, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was a familiar number I hadn't seen in ages. Nicole, an old teammate from before the reshuffle. We used to be close when she worked under me, before she moved to marketing. I answered. "Elena, it's wild over here. You won't believe it," she whispered. "Try me," I said, already guessing. Mr. Harrington just tore into Ethan, right there, in front of the whole team. The boardroom was packed. Mr. Harrington stormed in and dropped the Silvermere contract on the table. And then he asked, dead serious, "Did you read this before letting Elena go?" Ethan tried to dodge it, mumbled about strategic shifts and role assessments. But Mr. Harrington wasn't having it. He turned straight to the clause. "The clause you always mentioned, the one where only you could finalize Silvermere. It's there for a reason. We all knew, everyone except Ethan." She went quiet for a beat. Office chatter buzzed faintly behind her. "Elena, he went white. Like, dead white. He knows he just cost us Silvermere." I let out a slow, steady breath. What was Mr. Harrington's reaction? He said if this deal crashes, Ethan's role at the company is on the table. I exhaled, only then realizing how long I'd been holding my breath. That was it. The first real dent in Ethan's perfect facade. "I'm not sure what you're thinking," Nicole added, "but whatever it is, you've got the leverage now." I thanked her quietly and hung up. Then walked to the window and stared out. The skyline sat in serene stillness. That stillness always calmed me. The city didn't care about human drama. It just kept breathing. At 11:15 sharp, a new message lit up my screen. This time, it was from Mr. Harrington himself. "Elena, I owe you an apology. I misread everything. Please come in, not just for Silvermere, but so we can speak privately." It was tempting, But I wasn't going to waltz back in like the past day hadn't happened. Not yet. Ethan's blunder went beyond paperwork. It was about respect, trust, the years I'd sacrificed, none of which could be undone with a frantic call and an empty offer. Still, something shifted quietly inside me. I wasn't vindictive, but I wasn't fragile either. I wasn't after revenge. I wanted responsibility to land where it should. I picked up my phone and typed a reply, calm and clear. No call, just a message. I'm open to returning to close the Silvermere deal. But I have terms. I'll speak with Mr. Harrington first. I sent the message, swapped out my pajamas, and got ready. When I reached the office, it was a little after noon. I didn't use the employee entrance. I strode through the front lobby like an outsider on purpose. I wanted eyes on me. Word had already spread. I'd been let go just the day before. Coming back wasn't subtle. It was deliberate. A message. The receptionist jumped to her feet the moment our eyes met. "Ms. Harris, Elena," she said, stumbling over her words. "Mr. Harrington asked me to bring you straight in." As I walked behind her, I felt the shift in the air. Heads turned, voices dropped mid-sentence. The tension was thick, like even the walls were waiting to see what happened next. Mr. Harrington stood waiting at his office door. When I approached, his face was serious. "Elena," he acknowledged with a nod. "I appreciate you coming." I returned the nod but kept my arms at my sides. He moved aside and let me walk in first. We sat in silence for a second as I settled across from his broad oak desk. He closed the door gently, leaned back against it, and sighed deeply. "I miscalculated," he started, "badly. I handed my son the reins before he was ready. I thought he'd grow into the role, but instead he tore things down before he knew how to hold them up." I said nothing. He took a seat across from me, his tone quieter now. "What Ethan did was careless, insulting, and worst of all, he endangered a deal we've spent 6 months trying to lock in." I gave a slow nod. "That's right. I reviewed the contract again this morning, line by line. You had exclusive authority on Silvermere. Legally, they're not obligated to engage with anyone else. We added that clause after the Steel Ridge disaster, remember? It's still fresh in my memory." "Same here," I replied softly. I handled the mess that followed. He looked straight at me. "What happened to you yesterday was unjust," he said. "I want you back. Same role, full authority on the deal. Name your terms, and we'll accommodate them." His voice carried both sincerity and remorse. But this wasn't only about closing a deal. It was about leadership, ownership, and respect. "I'll come back," I said, "on 3 conditions. New paperwork, defined control over Silvermere, and 0 involvement from Ethan." He didn't hesitate. "Done." "One more thing," I said sharply. "This doesn't happen again, to me or to anyone else." He was silent for a beat. Then he nodded, slowly and deliberately. "You have my word on that." I rose from my seat. As soon as I exited his office, I spotted Ethan down the corridor, arms folded, faking interest in a conversation with one of the junior staff. But the second he saw me, his eyes locked onto mine. I didn't blink, didn't break eye contact. I walked right past him, and I swear, I saw the flicker of panic when he realized he was losing grip. By 1 p.m., the boardroom was ready. The Silvermere team had just arrived, and we had a 30-minute buffer before the scheduled meeting. I went through the documents again, verifying each detail we had locked in during previous rounds. Their CEO, Mr. S., was direct and highly perceptive. Trust was everything to him, and even a hint of internal chaos would be a deal breaker. As I set down the final Arabic version of the agreement on the table, I noticed Ethan stalking outside the glass-walled conference room like a restless predator. Mr. Harrington stepped in to block his path. The low voices turned heated until Mr. Harrington abruptly raised his hand to shut him down. Ethan's face flushed deep red. He threw a glance over his shoulder, furious and humiliated, before turning and walking off. That was the final time our paths crossed. At exactly 1:30, Mr. S. arrived with his team. I welcomed him in Arabic, and his face immediately brightened. He smiled, a rare thing for him. "You remembered," he said, pleasantly surprised. "Respect goes a long way." The meeting started. Everything flowed without a hitch. 3 hours later, hands were shaken, and the agreement was finalized. After they exited, Mr. Harrington walked over, his face showing visible relief. "You pulled us back from the edge," he said. "I owe you more than just an apology." "What you owe is leadership," I said. "Leadership that understands power isn't a privilege, it's a duty." He didn't argue. That evening, as I made my way to the car, the weight of the last 2 days slowly began to fade. I returned not as a subordinate, but as someone fully aware of her worth and determined to have it acknowledged. Still, I knew the battle wasn't finished. Ethan may have stayed silent for now, but men like him don't simply vanish. Around here, they withdraw first, then they strike back. Within a week, the Silvermere Agreement was front-page news in the industry bulletin. "A landmark in international negotiation strategy," the headline read. "Historic partnership secured with Middle Eastern firm, custom approach, and multilingual leadership cited as keys to success." My name wasn't printed, but inside the company, there was no doubt about who had landed the deal. My inbox filled up with subtle congratulations, messages from colleagues who had kept their heads down when things got rough. Some were from former mentees I had guided years earlier. Others came from managers who used to dismiss me during meetings, now applauding my composure under fire. I acknowledged their words, but I wasn't foolish. I'd seen how quickly loyalties shift when the tide turns. The air in the office had lifted. Smiles returned. Laughter echoed in the break room again. Mr. Harrington made it public. Ethan was benched from major decisions until further notice. Still, I couldn't ignore the unsettling sense that something was simmering. Little disruptions began to surface. It started with the reimbursement forms. The travel expenses for Silvermere were inexplicably delayed. Then, approval documents came back unsigned. No notes, no reasons. And then came the email, supposedly sent from my account, flagged by IT for review. It contained incorrect client information and had somehow made its way to one of our international partners. Fortunately, the partner was someone I had built strong rapport with. He contacted me directly to double-check. But the damage was already done. Doubt had been sown. I flagged the issue with our internal tech team. They confirmed there was no evidence of an outside breach. The email had originated from within the company's own network. That's when it became clear. Ethan was pulling the strings. He was no longer trying to fire me. That tactic had already backfired. Now, he aimed to undermine me, discredit me bit by bit, until I either walked away or someone higher up saw me as dead weight. It was textbook corporate sabotage, and far from the first time I'd witnessed it. In my first post-university role, I'd reported to a director who ran the same playbook. He'd never confront you, just drain your support, block your access, whisper your failures until vanishing seemed like your only choice. But this time, I wasn't that 22-year-old fresh graduate. I wasn't about to fade into the background. I kept records of everything, every missed communication, every error falsely attributed to me, every suspicious delay. I had learned, often the hard way, that paper trails held more weight than outrage in places like this. I even began keeping a personal journal, noting down times, dates, and discussions, just in case. Then, one afternoon, I caught a conversation that confirmed everything I'd feared. I was walking past the conference room when Ethan's voice cut through the door. Too loud, too careless. "She's unstable," he said. "Ever since she returned, her behavior's been volatile. I don't trust her with high-stakes clients." I stopped in my tracks. "All I'm saying is, maybe it's time we consider leadership transition in client services. She's clearly burned out." A second voice chimed in, unfamiliar to me. Still, she nailed the Silvermere contract under major pressure. Ethan let out a dismissive laugh. "That was a fluke. We can't base our operations on sheer luck." I lingered in place for a beat, then slipped away unnoticed. I felt a chill, not fear, but the cold clarity of calculated manipulation. He was laying the groundwork, spreading quiet rot. That evening, I lingered long after hours. The office was hushed, lit only by scattered lamplight. I sat alone behind the glass walls, gazing at the city skyline, wondering how many more fights I'd have to endure just to do my job in peace. Then, a voice cut through the quiet. "Burning the midnight oil?" I looked up. It was Mr. Harrington. "You're not exactly clocking out early, either," I replied. He walked in and placed a file in front of me. "Your revised contract, with everything we agreed on." I flipped through the pages. It was airtight. I gave a short nod. "We've also launched an internal audit," he said. "There's been too much mishandling of records lately." My eyes snapped up. He didn't look away. "I'm not naive, Elena. I know Ethan's not done yet." "Then why haven't you stepped in?" I asked. He hesitated for a long moment. "Because I had to see how far he was willing to push." In that moment, his voice carried the weight of a father, not a CEO. "You're protecting the company," I said. He gave a slow shake of his head. "I've been trying to protect you both, but maybe I waited too long." I shut the folder gently. "I don't need a shield. I need you to choose what kind of legacy you want to stand for." He held my gaze for a beat, then quietly left the room. And in that silence, I felt it. Something bigger was on the horizon. That week, the office felt colder, not from temperature, but from the shift in atmosphere. Conversations hushed the moment I passed. A few gave polite nods, others turned away. The internal audit was underway, and the tension was palpable. People were uneasy. So was I. I never pushed for the audit, but deep down, I was grateful it had started. The truth had to come to light, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been treading carefully since Ethan's rise. Still, I knew the rules of this game. In the corporate world, truth doesn't always bring resolution. Sometimes it ends in quiet departures and hefty severance. Sometimes it's lost beneath layers of red tape, where the harm festers. That Thursday, I was called into the audit committee's temporary office, an old storage room turned war room. Papers littered the desks, screens flickered with spreadsheets, and a large whiteboard was crammed with dates, log trails, and usernames. Alex, who headed the internal audit team, met me at the door. "Elena, appreciate you making time. We need to go over a few anomalies we've come across." I gave a brief nod and sat across from him. He opened a case file on the monitor. "Let's start with this email. It looked like it came from you. Turns out it was sent from a shared terminal by the break room. Whoever sent it manually entered your credentials." He shook his head slowly. "Not a phishing attack. Someone duplicated your login." This was internal. Someone inside. I crossed my arms. I flagged this the same day it happened. He offered a brief nod. Yes, and it helped. We've uncovered other instances. Emails edited, spreadsheets manipulated, approvals wiped, all from shared terminals, all under your credentials. A knot formed in my chest. This isn't random. Someone planned this. Alex paused. Yes, we've reduced the suspect list. There's also been activity that matches the login credentials of Ethan's assistant. I didn't move. He went on, voice steady. We're not making formal accusations, but this points to targeted sabotage, with you as the focus. My jaw tightened. What's the next step? That's where things get tricky, he said. Mr. Harrington has requested a direct briefing. He wants everything, raw, unfiltered. I nodded. I want to be in that room. Alex arched a brow. It's not mandatory. I said I'll be there, I repeated firmly. If the truth's coming out, I want to be there to face it head on. He didn't object. I tossed and turned all night. My mind kept drifting to all those who had disappeared without a sound in the past year. Skilled professionals, mid-career, who left quietly, no farewell emails, no fuss. People once pegged as future leaders. I used to chalk it up to normal attrition, but now I questioned how many had been quietly edged out by Ethan's schemes. The next morning, I got to the boardroom before anyone else. Mr. Harrington stood at the window, his posture still, like someone anticipating the last domino. Alex entered with two of his team. Ethan followed shortly after. He strolled in 10 minutes late, smirking, scrolling through his phone, until he caught sight of me. He stopped cold. She's not part of this meeting. Mr. Harrington didn't even look at him. I asked her to be present. Ethan shifted in place. This is meant to be an internal matter. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you used company systems to forge documents, I said coolly. Ethan scoffed. That's absurd, Alex interjected. We've documented several login attempts under your assistant's ID, each linked to discrepancies involving Elena's files. The timeline matches. Ethan's expression started to slip, that well-rehearsed confidence faltering. You're grasping at straws. She's just upset because she got replaced. I met his eyes, unflinching. You didn't fire me, Ethan. You set me up and nearly destroyed the biggest partnership this company has secured in half a decade. Mr. Harrington finally turned to face him. I gave you room to grow, he said, voice low, more than once, and you chose to undermine the very people trying to make this company better. Ethan's confident facade began to crack. You've got it all wrong. No, Mr. Harrington interrupted. It's exactly what I feared, and worse. The room fell silent, thick with tension. Then, Mr. Harrington rose from his seat. The board will review the findings. Until then, your suspension is effective immediately. Ethan parted his lips to object, but no sound came out. He gave me one last glance, not angry, but stunned, like it had just dawned on him that the game was truly over. Without a word, he turned and walked out. I remained seated. Mr. Harrington let out a breath, his posture heavy with regret. I let him down, he murmured, not just as a leader, maybe even as a father. You can't guide someone who chooses not to change, I said softly. But the company still needs a leader, and that can still be you. He met my eyes and gave a slow nod. For the first time since this ordeal began, the pressure began to ease. 2 weeks had gone by since that meeting, but the reverberations still lingered across every hallway. Ethan hadn't been seen since, and his signature smirk had become the punchline of hushed breakroom conversations. The board acted swiftly. The case was airtight, detailed, and too incriminating to brush aside. Fabricated emails, login trail anomalies, vanishing documents, and HR complaints twisted into weapons. Every move traced back to Ethan, either directly or via his proxies. When the final findings were released, it became undeniable. Ethan's actions weren't just personal. He had jeopardized the company's entire ethical foundation. His suspension was upgraded to a dismissal. The official statement referenced ethical violations and internal breaches. No court battles, no headlines, just a quiet departure, erased from the company's narrative. Still, whispers traveled fast. I expected a surge of triumph when I found out. Instead, there was just calm, a grounded steadiness, like surviving a storm and stepping into clear skies. A few days later, Mr. Harrington invited me into his office and gently shut the door behind me. He sat behind his desk, a folder resting in front of him, untouched. "I've spent these past weeks reflecting on everything that's transpired," he said, "and what kind of future I want for this company." I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "In just 1 month, you've displayed more leadership than some achieve in years. You preserved our largest deal, kept your integrity under public pressure, and handled personal attacks with grace. That's the kind of leadership we need." He pushed the folder toward me. Inside was a letter, promotion to Director of Client Strategy, a senior executive role reporting directly to him. I glanced up, surprised. "I didn't seek this out." "Exactly," he said. "That's what makes you right for it." I paused, then nodded slowly. If I take this on, I thought, it has to be on my terms. I'm not here for the title. I want to reshape the culture from the ground up. He gave a small smile. That's what I was counting on. That evening, I sat alone in my temporary office, set up while the main one was being remodeled, gazing at the nameplate that hadn't yet been engraved. I had spent years walking these corridors, questioning whether my efforts, the long hours, the salvage deals, the crises I managed quietly, had ever truly been noticed. I used to believe that staying quiet kept the peace, avoiding unnecessary conflict, but that silence nearly cost me everything. This wasn't just about a job title or one deal. It was about remembering that capability isn't conceit and dignity isn't a flaw. I had been overlooked, undermined, and set up to fail, but I had never been broken. And through it all, I hadn't let bitterness take root. That, to me, was the real victory. In the weeks that followed, I began rebuilding the department, restoring open communication, and bringing back employees who'd been unjustly forced out. I implemented an anonymous feedback system, ensuring no one else would have to stay silent out of fear. I also made space for junior staff. Some had seen everything unfold and approached me, curious how I stayed grounded. I told them honestly, "You don't always choose the battles," I said, "but you always choose who you are while fighting them." As for Ethan, I'd heard whispers. He was applying to firms out of state, but his reputation had followed him there too. Some believed Mr. Harrington intervened quietly to keep Ethan's name out of public fallout. Perhaps that was a final gesture of a father's care. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. One afternoon, as I made my way through the corridor, I caught sight of the glass-walled room where the Silvermere talks once unfolded. I stopped in my tracks, memories flooding back, the sabotage, the frantic phone call, the fear, and finally, the victory. That deal altered the path of my career, but the true change came the day I smiled at Ethan and walked out of his office with my pride intact. That was the real turning point, not because I surrendered, but because I finally recognized my own value and decided never again to hand it over no matter who stood in front of me.